You might think that the world's biggest choke point is a canal or even a strait. However, the reality is that it's melting ice and Russia controls it. But before we reveal the 30B mega project that you are about to discover and how it will completely change global trade and geopolitics, please subscribe to the channel if you enjoy videos like these. The secret route. Let's just think about this. The massive container ships that are stuck in the Suez Canal are waiting days or even weeks to pass through one of the world's busiest maritime bottlenecks. On the other hand, ice-class tankers are cutting straight across the top of the world, shaving thousands of miles off their journey while completely bypassing Western-controlled waterways. That just goes to show how much of a geopolitical advantage countries from these regions have. And now this isn't even science fiction, this is the Northern Sea Route, and it's rewriting the entire playbook of global shipping, whether the West likes it or not. Currently, the ENSA runs across Russia's Arctic coast from the Kara Gate in the west to the Bering Strait in the east. The coast is around 3,000 miles shorter than the traditional route if we go through the Suez Canal for ships traveling between Shanghai and Rotterdam. So in ideal weather conditions, this translates to saving around 10-15 days of transit time and hundreds of dollars in fuel costs too. But here's what makes this ice silk route so fundamentally different from any other shipping route on Earth. The thing is, you can't use it without Russia's permission. You can't even navigate it without Russian icebreakers that are escorting you throughout. Moreover, you can avoid the Russian fees, surveillance, and control over every aspect of your journey and your shipping plans. The Suez Canal has a government, the Strait of Malacca has international law, and the Northern Sea Route has physics, which Russia is going to exploit and is already exploiting to the maximum. Disappearing ice. But here's the thing. Melting ice caps are the thing. Climate change is transforming the Arctic at a pace that is shocking even to the climate activists who are studying it full-time. Summer sea ice extent in the Arctic has been declining at about a whopping 13% per decade since the late 1970s. This ice, the ice that is younger, thinner, and less stable than historic ice sheets, and it's only getting worse. To make matters even worse, what used to be multi-year ice that persisted through summers is increasingly becoming seasonal ice that melts away entirely. This creates something that has never existed in human history: a navigable ocean atop the world. The ENSA used to go through this route maybe 2 months a year in the best conditions, and even then, it was incredibly risky. But if we look back at it now, we're looking at navigation windows approaching 4 to 5 months, which is massive for the trade routes. Russian officials have also said they expect year-round navigation to become easy within the next few decades. We currently don't know how the timeline is going to be or even if it's realistic, but that is not what actually matters. What matters is that the trend line is undeniable under unidirectional forces. The Arctic is opening, and it's opening up fast, making all the big superpowers worried about their trade routes. But here's where it gets strategic. The first mover who controls this route captures generational wealth and advantage. Late movers will not just need to catch up, but they will face massive amounts of losses because most people would prefer going through the Arctic. Russians understood this decades ago when Western governments were still debating whether climate change was even real. This is because they were living in that area, experiencing climate change in real life. Russia's $30 billion nuclear gamble. This is where Russia's strategy genuinely gets impressive and disturbing from a pure logistical standpoint. They have already invested an estimated $30 billion into the Arctic infrastructure over the past decade. And the centerpiece of that investment is something that no other country on Earth could even come close to replicating, which is a fleet of nuclear-powered icebreakers. Rosatom is Russia's state nuclear corporation that operates the world's only fleet of nuclear icebreakers. We are talking about the icebreakers in the past that would clear a path for a few months before needing to refuel, but these are vessels that are powered by the mighty nuclear reactors that can operate continuously for years without stopping, smashing through ice that is up to 3 meters thick. Most of this is happening in some of the world's most dangerous climates we've ever seen. The flagship of this fleet is called the Arctica class, with vessels including Arctica, Sibir, and Ural that are already in service. However, more of these flagships are under construction. Each one costs around $500–700 million to build and represents years of hard work, dedication, and a future-proofing approach that doesn't exist anywhere outside Russia. But why does nuclear power matter here? This is a valid question because conventional diesel-powered icebreakers might be cheaper for the country. These diesel-powered icebreakers have a huge limitation, and that is the need to refuel, which means that they need ports with fuel infrastructure, making the operation longer and much bigger than it should be. A nuclear icebreaker can operate for 3-4 years without refueling, covering vast distances and maintaining full power output regardless of how remote the location is. In other words, it means Russia can guarantee a year-round presence and control the entire NSR. They are not dependent on seasonal supply chains or vulnerable fuel depots. Icebreakers are just the sharp end of the spear because Russia has been building out a comprehensive Arctic infrastructure that includes modernized post-long export terminals like the Yamal facility, different, uniquely designed bases that also serve as search and rescue, satellite coverage, and even ice monitoring systems that will blow your mind. The Northern Sea Route Administration in Moscow is now functioning as a government agency, and they have the power to grant or deny transit permits, which is huge for the country. In theory, these are basic bureaucratic requirements for navigating treacherous waters. In practice, the countries will give Russia absolute discretion over who uses the route and under what conditions. The entire system is designed so that transit is feasible only with Russian clearance and escorts. You cannot physically navigate the Ensenada safely without the icebreaker support for most of the year. Russia controls the icebreaker, they control the route, and they control who can enter and go out. This is pure domination in its purest form. Russia's exploitation. Now we need to talk about the legal control here because it's absolutely wild how much control Russia actually has. They've already managed to create a situation where international law has become basically irrelevant. Russia claims that the Ensenada passes through its internal waters, which would give Moscow the same control as if it were running rivers through Russian territory. Other countries like the United States argue that these international states where freedom of navigation should apply under the UN Convention on the Law of the Sea. But who is right? If we talk about legality, it's quite confusing. The treaty language wasn't written with an architect in mind because nobody imagined going through these waters ever, especially making it a trade route. Now it's here. There are legitimate arguments on both sides, and resolving it would require an international law debate that could take decades. But here is the genius offer that Russia has managed to make. The legal question doesn't actually matter. Physics enforces compliance regardless of what any treaty says. Even if international law were to rule that the Ensenada is an international state, we still can't navigate it without the Russian icebreakers. Russia controls the icebreakers, and they can simply decline to provide escorts or even price them prohibitively. What's crazy is that this is all fair to the maximum. Russia has created a situation where they have massive amounts of control that is enforced by nature itself. They can exercise power through quiet administrative friction rather than making it obvious. Headlines would make them look bad. If you want to transit the Ensenada, you need a permit. You need to provide detailed cargo information, crew manifests, and every single specification you can imagine. Russia is going to review that paperwork, and it could take weeks during the peak season. When it comes to the icebreaker, currently they are scheduled out for the next 2 months, but Russia would put you on the waiting list. Imagine how much control they already have. None of it violates international law, and all of it gives Russia the strategic benefits that countries like the United States do not have. China and Russia. So far, we have covered what exactly the Russian Ice Silk route will be. Now let's talk about who is going to use this route and why. This is where geopolitics gets messy. China has been the most enthusiastic adopter of the Ensenada, officially incorporating it in its Belt and Road Initiative as the Polar Silk Road for Beijing. This route represents something amazing: diversification away from 2 points that the United States Navy controls. Right now, about 80% of China's imports pass through the Strait of Malacca, a narrow waterway between Malaysia and Indonesia that the US can potentially block in any sort of crisis. The Ensenada offers an alternative because ships carrying Alang from Russia's Arctic terminal to Chinese ports can completely avoid the Malacca Strait, the South China Sea, and every other port where the US Navy operates. This creates an interesting dynamic because Western sanctions on Russia actually accelerate Ensenada development by pushing Russia towards the Russia-China partnership. The more the West tries to isolate Russia economically, the more attractive the Arctic route becomes because it is completely sanction-resistant. The cargo moving through the NCERA right now is mostly energy and commodities, including lang, oil, coal, and even grain. Container traffic still remains uncertain and limited because the route's seasonal unpredictability makes it difficult for logistics to reach just in time. However, if we talk about insurance, this is where Western financial power still matters, but in an increasingly limited way. Most major shipping insurance is underwritten by Western countries' companies that are based in London, New York, or even Europe. They have been reluctant to cover an intra-transit due to perceived risk. But Russia and China's state-backed insurers are now going to fill the gaps. This is creating a whole other level of financial infrastructure for Arctic shipping that operates completely outside Western control. And here is the uncomfortable truth that Western policymakers are slowly realizing because they don't have good options to counter Russia's Arctic adventure. This is because Western navies have limited control over the NCERA. If they want to have their navies blockade this place, they would need to go through a war that nobody is willing to go through during peacetime. Economic sanctions also have similar limitations. You can sanction Russia's shipping companies, but if they move cargo between Russia and China without even touching the Western ports, what leverage could you actually have? The main problem here is infrastructure. The West doesn't have a comparable icebreaker fleet. Currently, they have 2 aging icebreakers, both of which are polar research vessels, not the heavy nuclear-powered machines that navigate through these tough terrains easily. Canada has an Arctic coastline and theoretically could develop competing infrastructure. But they are dealing with their own icebreaker shortage, considering that the temperature there reaches deadly cold. But moving through the NCERA, even though it is a powerful lever, it's not a magic wand that makes Russia a shipping superpower overnight. Even now, the archaic environment remains brutally hostile due to climate change because extreme weather can shut down operations with minimal warming. If companies go through this route, they are risking a lot of delays as well. A simple oil spill in archaic waters could be catastrophic and nearly impossible to clean up. One disaster could trigger international regulations that make the NCERA politically toxic regardless of its value. So, what do you think about Russia's $30 billion ice silk route? Let us know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed the video, please subscribe to the channel and ring the bell icon to stay up to date with the world's largest megaproject news.